Well, guys, LeBron James is officially a 76er. Welcome to Philadelphia. You know what I mean? I'm currently in Philadelphia. The city is going crazy. People are screaming it out their windows. And I wanted to take this opportunity to talk about how this is a cultural, a branding, and an ownership play all in one, right? So anybody who's been here, y'all know that's what I'm on. We're going to talk a little bit about basketball. I feel like this is a perfect extension of my last video about Jaylen Brown. Just shifting from being a worker in that conversation to being an owner. So y'all can check out that last video and the fact that they literally play on the same team now. So let's have a deep dive conversation about the importance of how this impacts the youth, how this impacts Black people. And, we're going to give LeBron his flowers as well. So let's get to it. So the media wants to talk about the X's and O's. I mean, they've literally been in their seats dying, waiting for this story, right? I feel like that's a good place to start is like the actual NBA schedule was being held up by LeBron's decision. And I feel like this is just like such a pivotal point in recognizing how much power that these players hold in this industry. And it's time to take yield of that power. It's time to remove the colonial, like supremacy overseer kind of vibe that non-Black people play in the NBA. Like those days are over. And LeBron James in his tenure for over 20 years has changed decades and decades of misappropriation in the NBA with his conduct and his candor. And the best part about it is it wasn't a perfect story, right? It didn't just go from the best player to winning all the rings and being a fan favorite. Like this has actually been a story about ups and downs. And there's been times where people loved LeBron James. There's been times where people felt like he didn't make the right decisions. There's been several times where he's been underrated. There's been several times he's been overrated. But I think this decision speaks a lot about his character, his conduct, and what the long-term play is. If you really pay attention to politics, if you pay attention to economics, if you pay attention to basketball, and more importantly, if you just pay attention, right? Let's start off with his pay cut, right? He's receiving $8 million over 2 years, which is like a 90% pay cut from what he was, targeted to earn. He could have earned upward from $40 million for just one season of play, let alone signing for $4 million per year in his effort to win a ring. But I think this is bigger than just winning a ring, right? This also sets a precedent of what the standard of conduct and character in the NBA is. So let's take a little step back at a very pivotal point in his career that makes so much more sense today now. If we look at back when LeBron James was in Cleveland, right? He spent a long time there and never won a ring, right? This was the traditional struggle story of being in the NBA. You get drafted to the team and you do your best to try to win them a ring, and you either become a bum to everybody and they completely, tarnish your name, you get traded, and then, hopefully your career gets better. But it's a story of struggle. It's the Magic Johnson story. It's the Michael Jordan story. It's the Larry Bird story. And that's if it goes well, right? They all won rings and were highly revered. But there's so many other players who we're not going to name because this is not a campaign to make anybody look bad. But if we look at people who spent their whole careers, or a large majority of them, on teams that weren't successful, all to never really win and get the full acclaim and reputation and legacy that they deserved. This is what LeBron James changed when he went to Miami and what they called the decision, right? When LeBron made the decision on national television, that already started showing his leverage in the NBA, where whole televised events were coordinated just for his decision around being on a different team, potentially. Then when he finally decided to go to Miami, he started winning championships. And that was the goal, was for him to win championships and start developing his legacy as a player. And I'm sure for someone like him who works as hard as he does, I work very hard at what I do. I work very, very hard at what I do. So I could understand, like, there is an element of winning. there's an element of legacy and reputation that you want to take home from all your hard work. You're not just doing it for fun. That's something that I always say, right? So that's one thing that back in the day, all of us were heartbroken when we saw LeBron James go to the Heat, because we're so used to people struggling and willing to ruin their entire career being on one team. But this is what began the player centric, right? The center of a player's career being around what's best for them, and not what's best for the franchise. A lot of people say that that's what ruined basketball, that he made a culture in the NBA where players just pack up and go to new teams the moment that it doesn't look like that they're going to gain success. But this is what I mentioned in Jaylen's video. It's not Jaylen's video, but the video that I talked about where Jaylen was the main topic, and I talked about being an unappreciated worker in a corporation, right? That's what inevitably happens to all these players. Is if you don't do the team's bidding, if you don't live up to their expectations, they'll cut you, they'll make up stories about you, they'll make you less equitable and less valuable in the entire industry of the NBA. And LeBron James changed this. He gave the players the power to either make or break their own futures without feeling indebted to the franchises or the teams that draft them or just pay them for that matter. And we saw with Jaylen Brown, he got them a ring. He brought them to new heights. He resurged the entire platform and the entire brand of the Celtics, and they still let him go. And then ended up in Philadelphia, right? We're going to talk a little bit more about Jaylen Brown and his relationship to LeBron James later as it pertains to just Black culture. But I want to finish up LeBron's storyline here, because then he went to LA. We all know what happened after he left Miami. He won rings. Then he went to LA and won a ring, right? But before he went to LA, he went to Cleveland, right? We don't want to forget that moment he went back to Cleveland to what I believe was stake the claim and regain the legacy and reputation of his name, which was, oh, I could win in Cleveland, but I needed Cleveland to listen to me. I had the best ideas. I know the most about the players. I know about the culture and the pace of the game more than the GMs, more than the coaches, right? This is where he officially got his name, LeGM, right? LeBron James, the GM, right? Where LeBron James can come on a team and demand that the entire team is formed around his ideas. This also extended that same leverage to other players. We're going to start seeing a pattern in my conduct here, in my storytelling, because that's what this is all about, is taking back power. This whole conversation, if you get nothing else out of it, is about taking back your power, right? LeBron James went to the Heat, proved himself, went to the Cleveland Cavaliers, he proved himself. He went to the Lakers, proved himself. So he's consistently shown up and said, if you put the wheel in my hand, I will steer you in the right direction, right? And so this is where I want to end the point with LeBron, is because he had the entire league on standstill for this decision to go to the Philadelphia 76ers. And now this is setting him up not only to win his 5th ring, potentially a 6th ring, but it looks as if he has a player option as well, that at the ripe age of 45 years old, he could still continue to play basketball if that's within his wishes, right? So shouts out to LeBron James and us all seeing the long-term impact of his tenure in the NBA. He shifted from young Black men having to be thankful and grateful no matter what the hardships or the disrespect that they received on these teams that are owned by white men. We're just going to keep it a stack. It's like, instead of being so in debt to them, he took the power and said, look, we're the ones making you the money. We're the ones bringing you the syndication on television. We're the ones bringing the brand deals. We're the one bringing the value, right? As players, as Black men specifically. And that's something that as Black men we should be proud of and that we should pay attention to as far as business. So he made that a standard. Prior to that, everybody just did what the media or the teams told them to do. And shouts out to Rich Paul too, because their relationship as friends and bringing your friends onto your team also shifted that culture as well, where people's parents started managing them more, people's friends started managing them more. Even just the idea of putting someone on your team more looks like your decision than it looks like a bunch of insiders. So let's start talking a little bit more about just the evolution of like player empowerment a bit more. And then, we're going to get into the juicy stuff about culture. So let's talk a little bit about the evolution of players in the NBA, right? And we'll talk about Jaylen Brown in particularly as it relates to all of this, because I feel like Jaylen Brown is like a precursor of what we need more of in the NBA, right? From his willingness to openly say that he was going to rebuild Black Wall Street, which speaks a lot about personal morals, values, and politics, from him having his own shoe brand, 741, which he made only because he turned down, I believe, like a $50 million deal from Nike, which requires you to, maintain your likeness and your image as a person, right? And not allowing the NBA to pretty much own who you are. And not only that, but how he was released from the Celtics like trash. You know what I'm saying? They talked down on him. They made him seem uncoachable and not worthy of being valued the way that he truly is as one of the best players in the league, right? MVP candidate level stuff, bro. Like, that's the part that's so crazy about it, is that the league will treat you like you're nothing every single time, and it never fails. So let's unpack two of those things that we just mentioned, right? Like, signing a traditional like shoe deal is like one of the highlights of being in the NBA. You want to win a ring, you want to win MVP, you want to get a shoe deal. These are like the main things you want to do. All young Black men who aspire to this from super young, like, those are some of the main things that they look forward to. And Jaylen Brown was able to earn all of those things while also maintaining his voice and maintaining his integrity, right? Most people would be afraid to let you know what they truly believe in. And let's not get it twisted. He was in Boston. Boston ain't trying to hear nothing about no Black Wall Street. You feel me? So, like, just the fact that player empowerment and being player centric has become the majority of the narrative in the NBA these days is because the NBA treats its players like crap. You know what I'm saying? It didn't come from nowhere. If the NBA was like, yo, here's some equity in the team, here's some equity in the products you build, here's some equity in the television stations you build, ESPN, here's some like meaningful like accounting and agency that we can lend you. Like, no, every bit of being in the NBA is predatory. You give all your best years to a franchise and let you get injured or something. It's not like they're going to give you severance pay or take care of you or any of that stuff. You could have brought them championships and all types of endorsement deals and product deals, and they're going to treat you like, okay, on to the next young player who's coming into the league. And I'm so happy that Jaylen Brown was able to align with LeBron James on this, right? LeBron James has the most leverage in the NBA. It's undisputed at this point, right? He had the NBA schedule waiting for his decision. He took a pay cut for the legacy, for the teamwork of it all. He could have got, like I said before, more than $40 million to play for just 1 year, let alone take $8 million to play for 2 years. You feel me? So it's like, that's super important to mention, is like, players are being empowered. And I think that this is a precursor of what the league is going to look like in the future, right? Especially considering like all the cards have been shown, right? All the real intentions of these owners have been shown. It's predominantly white men who don't want their players to have equity, stake, or ownership. They don't want them to own their brands or nothing. And if it wasn't important, they wouldn't be holding these things hostage all the time. That's the part that makes it so blatantly obvious. People could say, oh, well, if they wanted that, they could have it. They do want it, and they can't have it. A lot of people have openly spoke about these things on several occasions, right? So it's like, let's stop playing all the games, right? And this is definitely when the rabbit has the firearm kind of situation, right? Because it's like, it's all cool when it doesn't seem like anybody's going to speak up and that they're willing to take the crumbs and that they're just grateful to play in the NBA and they're willing to take any deal that you're willing to give them and blah, 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 blah. But it's like when somebody actually stands up, they're uncoachable, they're unruly, they need to be getting rid of. But no, Jaylen Brown has just teamed up with one of the most powerful players in NBA history, if not in contention to be the most powerful player in NBA history, right? They're going to get some rings, right? So this also builds more leverage for every teammate on the 76ers, right? This continues to lay out the legacy of what being an extractor of the NBA looks like, right? And when black people finally take over the NBA and then they're able to look out for one another in a more ethical, equitable, and integral way, the NBA is only going to get better. But we got to get the slave drivers out of the industry, bro. Like, and this is going to be a turning point for black people, I believe, in the future, is understanding that, look, man, we built this place just like America, just like every industry for the most part that most white people capitalize on, but we don't have any of the ownership in them. And the fact that we're the predominant players in it, as far as like the amount of people who play in the NBA are mainly black people. And if they're not American black, they're black from another country, and they still participate in all of the same culture and all of the same enthusiasm of our culture. Yeah, man, we need that. You know what I'm saying? Run us that. You feel me? And you have to understand that LeBron James set the path for this, but he isn't the only person who made it sustainable and possible. There's a lot of player-centric players now. You got the James Hardens, you got the Kevin Durants, you got the Steph Currys. Now, they all navigate business and they all move differently, but you can also see the signature, the similarity in them being willing to do what's best for themselves and also best for their families, and having consideration of other players. I feel like the fact that LeBron James took $8 million says a lot about where the direction of the NBA is going to go, because there's clearly still an effort to want to win and play at the highest level. There's clearly some strategy that goes into it from all of his teammates and all of his associates on a business level. I mean, there were rumors, and I mean, they're confirmed. They're not rumors. There were stories that were told about how GMs were sending voice memos to Rich Paul, which is LeBron James' agent, like a boyfriend who just lost his girlfriend because he was cheating. Like, hey, baby, you think you can, give me a call back? I just want to talk to you and see if we can figure some things out, right? All right, so let's talk about some cultural stuff and let's talk about a lot more business, right? Because this is the part where we can use our imagination and just dream freely, man. You know, LeBron James is putting himself in a position from having that $1 billion stake as far as like the money that he's going to receive from Nike for endorsing their brand and making them tens, if not maybe even hundreds of billions of dollars, right? Now you got Jaylen Brown, who sets the precedent of owning your own product, building your own brand, and maintaining leverage, right? They're together on the same team. So that's going to be a symbol of what things are going to look like moving forward. And I'm looking forward to that a lot. And, the fact that there's conversations about, the NBA extending the franchise into other cities like Seattle or Las Vegas, and that LeBron James has been a large, like, topic inside of the conversation of ownership. We can see the pathway that's being laid out here, right? He even was able to get his own son a guaranteed job on the LA Lakers, which is like literally one of the largest franchises in NBA history, arguably, if not the Celtics, right? And so one thing that's important to mention is like the path that's being laid out, right? You got $1 billion, you're bringing all of this equity, you have the legacy and the reputation. Let's hope that he wins at least 5 rings, if not 6. Because if he wins 6 rings, then we're going to have no contention that he won a ring for 4 different franchises. He has the same amount of rings as Michael Jordan. And he literally is one of the best business players. And he's one of the most famous human beings on the planet. I think at that point, it's easy to say that LeBron James will be the GOAT. And then he gets to own his own franchise, which is something that Michael Jordan also did. But I really don't want to make this a comparison about Michael Jordan more than I want to make this a lineage of what it looks like to be a powerful person and be a powerful player and taking ownership of the industries that you build, right? Magic Johnson is a testament of what it looks like to take back your power. Then Michael Jordan came after him, taking back his power. Then you have a Kobe Bryant who was stepping into power before he transitioned. Now you got LeBron James taking his power, becoming LeGM, right? Making the calls, making the plays, structuring his team, structuring his deals, holding the NBA by the ball sack in their decisions, right? And then even Jaylen Brown coming through and saying, look, man, I'm going to speak how I want to speak. I'm going to use media how I want to use it. And like just looking at the structure of the NBA, like all of the best so-called analysts that were on Sports Center, they're being let go because they don't have enough leverage or enough star power to be able to compete with the independent media platforms. And this is what capitalists always talk about: is competition, competition, competition. But when we're actually competing and we all got the same resources, the corporations never win, because the players actually understand the culture of the NBA, right? They actually understand the mindset of NBA players. They're not like a Skip Bayless, right? They're not like a Stephen A. Smith who only have an analyst approach to it, right? And I'm not saying that they don't deserve a job or a space, but the players deserve more money, more equity, more say-so, more power, right? A Max Kellerman or whatever his name is, I think he came from boxing or something like that. There's no reason that these guys should be equally relevant and have equally as valuable as a voice as even a Shaquille O'Neal or a Charles Barkley. I don't even agree with them all the time. But the fact that they actually played the game and that they get to be analysts and stuff like that, I think is appropriate, because anyone can learn analytics. Anyone can go learn analytics. Everyone can't play in the NBA and have that lived experience. So I think being able to distinguish LeBron James and like this transition from being a worker to an actual owner is super important. Bringing Jaylen Brown into the conversation is super important because he's like a precursor of what the future is going to look like, right? Where you have the Jeff Teagues and the Gilbert Arenases and the Paul Pierces and the Kevin Garnetts who have better shows. Matt Barnes, Steven Jackson, they are way better shows and they can say way more than ESPN ever can. You feel me? You got platforms like the Big Three. You got platforms like Ball is Life. Like the NBA does not have as much leverage as it used to be. And if they don't start selling and inviting the players and the people who build this industry into the conversation, they're going to lose more money than they're making trying to exploit people. At some point, international NBA is going to be a thing. That's my thought process, is like with the NCAA having its NIL deals, and at some point college basketball players are going to be making as much as entry-level NBA players, and then eventually they're going to make more money and be making NBA salaries. You got the WNBA who's now starting to make more money. Like, we can see where this path is going, where you might as well let the players put some skin in the game, right? Because a bunch of non-basketball playing, overseeing, sharecropper, master kind of ownership structures is not going to work for long, man. Like this is a ticking time bomb because they don't actually understand the interests of the players. The players are the lifeblood to the game. You can't get an endorsement without them. You can't get any sponsorships. You're not getting no Sprint. You're not getting no Comcast. You're not getting none of the money from advertisers or anything if the players start actually taking ownership and taking their power back, man. And so that's why I'm very, very happy that we're moving from this worker mentality where it's like, oh, I just want to get into the NBA and I just going to be thankful and I are going to be grateful and I are going to kind of slave kind of vibe, where it's like no matter how bad the league treated people, they had to still get on the press conference, head held low, acting like everything all good, when in reality they know they had a whole bunch more to say and they felt very strongly about the decisions that was being made, right? So I look forward and I, put this in writing, hold me to this. I genuinely believe that LeBron James is going to find a way to become an owner of a franchise. And to be completely honest, why would you want to own the Cleveland Cavaliers? The Cleveland Cavaliers haven't made more money. They don't have any leverage in the NBA other than when LeBron is there. Shouts out to Donovan Mitchell. He's holding them up the best way that he can, but he ain't no LeBron. He's not bringing more syndication, more money, more sponsorships than LeBron James did. And for LeBron James to want ownership of the Cleveland Cavaliers, I feel like that's the that's the emotional story that we all thought we were going to get with this, right? Where you're going to either go to Miami, go to Cleveland, and continue to add more value. But no. This is LeBron James in his villain era. LeBron James said, I'm coming in for everything. I'm going to get these 6 rings. I'm going to live this legacy. And shouts out to my man Reason. He was saying, like, we wouldn't be surprised if how The Last Dance was, produced and owned by Netflix. I wouldn't be surprised if LeBron's Last Dance is produced and owned by him, and he licenses this last segment of his career. He packages it up in really nice content, adds it to all of the, the dope videos and all of the moments that he's accumulated over his career. And yeah, you might have to contact ESPN and a couple other people who initially produced your work. But let's be honest, once again, as lay owner, y'all gonna lose out on a lot of money not cooperating with LeBron James on his own biopic or his own Last Dance series kind of commentary on his career. Y'all gonna lose a lot on that. So it's like, this is why I'm just gonna, in this last point, as far as the ownership part, and move on to, how the culture is going to receive this. We're going to leave it on this note, is like, y'all better get in while y'all still can fit in. I know this was probably a little bit more harsher than some may have imagined, but I got to represent for my people, man. I got to represent for the youth. I got to represent the fact that Black people deserve to own. They deserve to be empowered. They built the NBA. They built a lot of spaces that a lot of other groups of people have benefited from in a long time. And now it's time to pass it up. It's time to pass the torch to the rightful owners. If the system doesn't want to give back what it owes, we're going to destroy the system. We're going to tear the system down, and we're going to opt out of the system. We don't even have to fight the system anymore. The system will crumble on its own with us just not participating. So let's end this on a light note, right? Like, I think this is the most important for the youth, right? Like, let's start all the way back from the beginning, right? Where it's like, we see LeBron James taking a pay cut, which is a very honorable thing to do. He didn't have to do that. That speaks a lot to character, camaraderie, loyalty, love for the game itself, and just setting a precedence of what it looks like to, like, look, yeah, I might have been player centric. I did the best I could in Cleveland. I did the best I could. We won in Miami. Then I went back to Cleveland, gave them what they really was looking for. Then I went to LA, left the legacy part intact, like where it's like, played for the best franchise, won a ring over there, and now we going to Philadelphia. And shoot, I don't think Philadelphia hasn't won a ring in nearly 40 years, so that's going to be monumental that he brings that franchise a ring and a championship. That'll genuinely, I think that'll highlight his legacy even better. You know what I'm saying? Than going to a Golden State Warriors or a Miami where they've won recently. Winning in Philadelphia, I mean, I think that'll be even bigger than New York, honestly. And like, the youth are going to really look at LeBron James, and they're going to be able to like hold some reverence for themselves, because they're going to be like, man, he did it with his friends, his team, the guys he started with. He was able to call the shots, and he was willing to take the pay cut. And then moving beyond that is like the fact that he was willing to actually maintain the ownership of his brand, not on paper, guys. I understand that, but let's say rulership, because we talked a lot about slave ship, ownership, rulership, and mothership in a video that I've made here as well on this YouTube channel. And he's extended and shown a lot of rulership in his career, right? Determining who can be in on teams with him, where he wants to go, and etc., how he wants to announce himself and show up. I think that rulership is important. And he also showed the humanity in playing basketball, right? He wasn't a cigar smoking, gambling basketball machine like Michael Jordan was, man. He showed that some people not gonna like you, some people are gonna like you. You know what I mean? Sometimes you're gonna love your decisions, sometimes you're gonna regret them, but he always kept his head high, and I think that's something that people gonna always remember. And I think that's the part that people love about LeBron the most, is that he shows up as a human being. And then, not to mention, like, he's teaming up with Jaylen Brown, right? Jaylen Brown is like, I believe, the next LeBron-esque kind of player, right? I love Anthony Edwards. I love Shai Gilgeous. And I look forward to maybe even Anthony Edwards having, some intentional revelations about his career. But as far as what Jaylen Brown has showcased and demonstrated so far, he has the ring, he has the mental acumen, he has his own brand. Like, he's been showing up, and I have a lot of respect for Jaylen Brown up until this point. I feel like him playing with LeBron is setting up the passing of the torch of what the NBA needs to see more of. And I think that was an intentional reason. Now, we all have heard the stories about how Jaylen Brown was allegedly like critical of LeBron James. I'm sure there's like some stories. I'll like try to go get a screenshot or something like that for y'all if y'all want to look more into that story and where to find it. But like, I think that's something that can be easily resolved. And I think that's really good for the youth to see as well, as far as black people, burying the hatchet for what's the most important. We want to win rings. We want to get to this money and we want to leave a legacy. So I'm pretty sure they've already smoothed that over. Otherwise, he wouldn't have signed up for the team. I think having a disagreement or having an opinion about, another NBA player, regardless if he's your son or not, I think that's, within the realms of having, an agreeable disagreement, right? But y'all let me know in the comments. I'm pretty sure some people wouldn't be able to like let that go, but I also think that that's why we not LeBron James, right? That's why we not greatness. That's why sometimes we lack what we need to have in our community because we can't put petty things like that behind us. And that's why I think, once again, this is a great moment for the youth to watch this happen in real time, where it's like, oh, as black men, we can get our business in order. We can have a legacy. We can stand on our own and not sign predatory contracts with predatory people in predatory industries, right? And we can bury our own grievances with one another to do something great. So, that's the main thing that I really made this video for. It wasn't because I wanted to talk about basketball. Y'all, we already know this channel is about the diaspora and ownership and, being a critical thinker. But I really made it because the youth need to have a place where they have a trusted source of information and a conversation that they can be a part of as the world continues to spin and develop. So like, shouts out to the youth. I really look forward to how this plays out in y'all's interest. I'm in Philadelphia, so the city's already going crazy. People shouting out their cars. LeBron is in Philly. The Philadelphia 76er tickets are going to skyrocket because I'm telling you, just recently, they was like $20. They were like $40. You could get into a Sixers game. People was giving away Sixers tickets. Now, yeah, these next 2 years in Philly about to be lit. So let me know how y'all feel in the comments. Share this video, subscribe, do all of the dope things. And I'm going to get this video out so that we can really have a conversation in real time. So thank y'all.